And another official welcome for all that are watching post this event. Welcome once again to the ScreenSaverz School Coffee Meets. It's the first event of 2023, and we're very lucky and happy to host Damjan Obal again, our favorite researcher and one of the, I believe, most inspiring people in this area. I could listen to him speak forever. So as you can see, I'm a fan. My name is Amedea. I'm head of the school, and so let's start. So Damjan has years of experience. He's currently working as a UX researcher at Cognite. Did I say this right, Damjan? And yep. I told you in the post, or we told you in the post, that he works with robots. So Damjan, maybe can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes. So it's I actually don't work with robots. We work with robots, and it's one of the courses that we have at Cognite. So the company works with industrial data. So it's a very specific. So it's like we work with data ops, so democratizing and making data available. But we focus on heavy industry, so like oil, gas, energy. My role is to be the researcher / designer. So we have a team of almost 20 designers, give and take. I'm the only official researcher, but that means I wear multiple hats. So I work in what we call the data onboarding group. So when our users and customers, when they, as we call it, ingest data. So I'm looking at that, especially with data quality. So very hardcore topics, but it's it's like I love hardcore topics. So that's what I do and what we do there. But we have robots that go on far and remote places. We work with Boston Dynamics, for example. So we use their Spot, and so they learn, they take photos, so people don't have to go. But it's just one tiny part, but it's very cool. So to my son, he thinks I work with robots as well.
I also think you work with robots, and it's super cool.
Yes. Nothing beats that.
So actually the first question, or I have two questions before we start with your presentation and telling us more about what you do and doing the demo, is to kind of, there's this big crazy thing going on called layoffs. It has the hashtag layoffs 2023, and there were a big bunch of those in 2022. If you would talk to a founder or CEO or somebody, stakeholder that does this, what would you say is the biggest benefit we bring as a profession, as designers, as researchers?
I think it's a challenging time for us, for design, and people who know me, they know that I was always not anticipating that, but it's kind of like it's this boomerang effect. And design, of course, like we need to prove value, and I do love talking about like what's the value of design, what's the return of investment. It's kind of dirty, and we are supposed to be the ones, especially on research side, talking about user needs and values. But I think what I keep repeating when people ask me what's my contribution and what I hope is my contribution is like to minimize risk of investment. And it's not just if you're a tiny startup, and it's of course more true if you're in a industrial SaaS platform like what we are building, because if design is involved, then we can minimize this risk. So not just by hitting all the points with the usual suspect, like we provide value for the user. Of course, that's why we're here. But what does value mean? So we should be a bit more diligent, and that's I think we're good at that if we want to. And design being involved in this decision making, I think it's really hard to fight against that. And still, if I would talk to CEOs and the C-level people, it's still, compared to business development, we are still a tiny portion. So it's kind of, we are a drop in the ocean compared to others. Of course, depends. In big tech, So if you're like a Facebook or Google, there's actually much more designers and researchers per development team. So there's a bigger percentage there. But that's kind of also a risk. If you work at Instagram and there's like 200 designers, kind of, even I would find it hard to justify like what are all 200 doing. So.
Okay.
But I think that's a proof of value and minimizing risk would be my argument. Risk of investment, like, do you want to unleash 25 developers onto something before being a bit certain that it's the right thing? And that's where we as UX people, we come in.
Great, thank you. Also, it's connected to this topic. I read a post yesterday on LinkedIn from one of the UX influencers saying kind of that this democratizing research is like the big bad wolf of like we're letting everybody do research, and then now we have layoffs because everybody can do research and design, and we actually put on our event, we're democratizing research. So we're kind of provocative right now. What is your stance on that?
Very, very good point. I think it's not as simple as like black and white. Democratizing means that everybody can do it, but that doesn't really mean that. It just means it's more accessible. That's what I mean by democratizing. So empowering people to do it, but to do it right. And that's why you talking about like standardizing, so having like same high level and requirements for quality. But I'm fully agree with democratizing. If everyone can do it, then we don't need, and then, for example, then the product managers will do it. And to be honest, 9 out of 10, they do a better job than we do anyway. That's very harsh, but a lot of times, because we lack, like design lacks the business mentality and like what's the business reasoning. But democratizing, definitely, I wouldn't say that means everyone can do it and everyone should do it. There's still space and place. But that's why we need to invest a bit more to kind of explain what we do. And the thing I mentioned already, it's not like this ivory tower of research and only like 2 wizards can do it. No one wants that, and no one will benefit, because it's kind of childish to think you will create like you will be the gatekeeper to all the knowledge. It doesn't work like that. At some point, someone will come in, and so I would rather be prepared and be involved in the beginning and democratize it early on and be part of that process than kind of saying no, because then it's very hard to argue. But I do agree, it's very hard if it's not very good if everyone does it and everybody does everything. Then we go back to old days when developers designed, and you would have a unicorn front-end developer, and every designer would need to do CSS and HTML. Those days are over, but now everybody is expected to do some research, which I actually think it's good, but it's also very scary. So that's why I'm an advocate of evangelizing and democratizing early on, but us as more, I want to call it senior, but more experienced people being part of that process, not just being the one criticizing it at the end.
That's a great answer. Okay, and it's also a great introduction to your talk. So I will unpin myself and the stage.
Stay pinned.
Is yours.
Yes, I'll just find my slides. There we go. So hello again, everyone. I'm actually plan is to go to rush through a couple of slides. People who know me, you know, I talk fast and a lot. So I will kind of dump some of my, not knowledge, but some of my thinking, how I would approach democratizing and evangelizing, and as I mentioned, standardizing research if I were to be you. And this is how at least we're trying to work at Cognite, and what I'm trying to kind of that's kind of my mission with whichever team I work in. So kind of a loaded term, make as like Amedea mentioned, evangelizing and democratizing. Fully agree. It's even more loaded when I say make it work, but I love that. To be a bit provocative. So what I mean by make it work is make it actionable, and that's the most important. I think more and more, I'm a huge advocate for pragmatic approach to design and research. So not, especially now in the hashtag layoffs, let's make it count. Still work on the vision piece, but also make our work count. Especially true for design, because sometimes it's a bit fluffy what we work on, and then everyone can do it. And if everyone can do it, if engineers, product people, if everybody can fiddle in Figma, and if we create UI kits, why do we need designers? If everyone can do user testing, why do we need researchers? So that's why I think we need to talk about it. And the more we talk about it, the more we kind of then see we should actually work together. It's not a big bad wolf. It's a cuddly dog. We just need to kind of find a way to tame that beast. So this is I'm not gonna read through it. This is my thinking when it's really late in the evening, and I try to formulate how I would approach UX design / user research. It's a bunch of concepts, and we'll share that one later with you. But that's what I'm going to talk briefly today. Two, I've seen some familiar faces. I always, whenever I talk to anyone, I always start asking myself and everyone that joins, so why are you here? And this is a more kind of to me, it's a fundamental question, like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing research? Why am I doing user experience? Why am I here with you? And I think it's good to ask ourselves that question, especially when we work with users. And I always show this one to whoever I talk to, that this is not user experience alone. So I show, like, this is user experience, me working on boring systems. This is user experience, working with cool physical objects, kitchen appliances. This is user experience when you work with inside the emergency rooms and do products and both digital and physical. That's amazing. If you're fortunate like I was, it's you're able to work with physical devices like this one. Super cool. Also user experience. Of course, we work with post-its, so it's exciting, but leads to shiny new objects. And I spent a lot of time as a not just researcher but also designer. I spent a lot of time analyzing, spending a lot of time in spreadsheets. So this is also user experience, and that's why I'm here, kind of to talk passionately about synthesis and research. And then finally, this is a big part of my world, is when user experience is means talking to people, understanding in context. And this is, for example, on an oil platform, this is our users. So this is the people using or being impacted by the products we built. This is, I promise, robots. So this is why we use robots, to send them out to places. And this is only at the end, when you know what you need to do, then you can design and write software for robots, and then robots can go out and explore, and then we make the world a safer and a better place, because no refinery exploded today, so that's good. We didn't have to send 20 people with a helicopter. That's great. It's much cheaper. but it's also, like I said, it's also user experience. And that's why I'm here to talk about what does it mean, and that it's much bigger than apps and websites. And that's what excites me. Talking about my part of as a researcher in a design team, I'm embedded heavily and deeply into development of very complex concepts. So I work with data quality and data observability. And I didn't have a clue about the domain when I joined Cognite. After 6 months of researching, I probably still don't, but I'm very much excited. And that's also, for me, design and user experience is when you learn about new things. And this is what I'm working on now. And this is why I love my job, to kind of be constantly challenged. I don't want to talk about data observability, don't worry. I'll show you what I mean by it, how we work on it. But I want to talk about the users and about the user part of user experience. So we focus on those human beings, and who are they? It's a very fun question, because usually we think we know our users, or someone else thinks they know our users, and we talk about the known knowns and known unknowns. But a lot of times we kind of hypothesize, and then we get all these like false positives, and they say, yes, this is our users, they're hipsters, and then we're going to build something for them. But the reality is not everybody needs a new app. So if I go back to those lovely people that I showed briefly in the beginning, if you ask those users, they will tell you a different story. And they're usually the users no one really talks to, because like, yeah, no one cares. We like working with those people because it's like cool and we can build personas. But if you ask your users what they really need, they will tell you like, we don't need like a Swarovski kitchen stove. We just need something that works. And then you say like, okay, let's make a way for you to cook as you did 20 years ago. It's still going to be simple. We're still going to have haptics. It's not going to be old touch, and it's going to be great. So this is what you get when you work with users and when you apply user research. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm excited to talk to you. Sometimes, that's my world now, sometimes users actually need this. And it's also very good, perfectly fine. And you just need to be aware. So this is, for example, our users work with tables like that. And we actually produce tables like that. And we get kudos and high five for producing tables like that. And imagine having amazingly good looking, great functioning SaaS platform with the best user experience designers working on it. And we spit out a report, which you can import Excel, or you can maybe make it a bit fancier in Power BI or Grafana. But that's all we do. You download, for example, a JSON file. And that's great, because this is what our users need. We can look down the line and we can produce reports inside our product, and that's what we are doing. But for the time being, they're more than happy to get something like that, because this provides great value for them. And this is when you use user research, then you learn what's the most important thing. And for them, this was actually holy grail. It was impossible otherwise to compare in one view, for example. So I know that this is, I talk about research, and sometimes I use user research, design research, UX research. And I just want to clarify, it doesn't really matter. There's Amedea, you mentioned in the beginning, like the LinkedIn debates. There was also a big debate, which actually was really interesting. Should we just stop trying to define ourselves? Are we design research, UX research, user research? And I'm fully on with that. So it doesn't really matter. So we are designers, we are researchers. A lot of times we are both. So just to clarify this, at least this morning, there's no difference. We work with users, we do some research. And that's what I mean. And just to kind of flex your not brain, but your arms a bit. While I'm talking, think about it. Take not more than 2 minutes, but think about it. Like if you work with any kind of users, customers, even if you don't work at a company, but just think about it. Do you know who's using your product or who might be using your product? Just think about it. There is no right or wrong. We're not talking about personas or archetypes. Just think about it and write it down. Just think about it. We don't have to share. We're not recording it. We're not grading it. So don't worry. But just think about it while I'm rushing through the slides. Sounds good? Waiting for Amedea to give me a thumbs up. Yes. Cool. Cool. So while you're thinking, I'm just giving, I think it's just 3 things I want to talk about before jumping into some examples. If we want to talk about scaling, democratizing, evangelizing research, and equipping yourself and others for successful research, I think we need to start the basics. We need to understand, and this goes also back to the original question before about our value and the whole layoffs discussion. So if we can't connect to the business side, then it's going to be really hard to defend why are we doing it and what we did. So I do love talking about setting those kind of fundamentals before we begin. So you as a designer, researcher, developer, product manager, doesn't really matter, but you should know at least the basics about the challenge that lies ahead. So I'll challenge you to know about goals, scope. So what are the goals for the project? What are the goals for this assignment you're part of? What is the scope? How far should we take it? What is the domain? Is it mobile health? Is it finance? Do I need to read books like I did? So that's important before you commit yourself. What is the beliefs? What do we think we know about your users? What do we think we know about the problems? Is there anything that's already been done? For example, marketing did some research. That's the beliefs, the existing beliefs. And then the constraints. Are we limited with technology, for example, is a very good one. And time. And what time should we deliver this? Can I go and spend time on research, or you need something next week? Then we might have an argument, but let's have an argument now and not have this like dysfunctional kickoff, and then both sides will be grumpy at the end. Finally, there's like success. What does success mean? My favorite topic. What does it mean if we are successful? A lot of times we're not aligned on what success means. If I talk to Amedea and we are both designers and we work on the same project, but we might have a very different opinion what success means. And then the final 2 are more for you to learn if you're working with a new team, for example. Who are they? It's usually cross-functional teams are quite often the case. So inside a bigger organization, you might work with different team on different project, and then learn what their routines are, especially as a designer. If you come in, so should I be aware of something? Their stand-ups, their routines with meetings, how do they work? So that sounds boring, but I think it's very, very important if we want to kick off projects the right way. And out of those, I want to talk about like success and goals. And goals are the first thing is like to set goals. And it sounds very, yeah, of course, whatever. It sounds simple, and it should be, but a lot of times this is where we do the first mistake. We don't set the goals right. Either we set them too ambitious, or we set them too vague. And then it's really hard to return and see and connect them to success criteria, which we'll mention a bit later. So for a good kickoff, I think goals are fundamental. So there's different metrics like the SMART goals, or you can use like the HEART framework to set the goals. But what they all have in common, and I kind of try to boil it down into three things. Good goals are short, measurable, and I call them relatable. So short, make it like concise, crisp, don't make it fluffy. Measurable, ideally, it's easy to validate, it's easy to attach a metric to it. That's the best type of goals. Not always possible, but if you can, try to make them measurable. And relatable. If you work with backend engineers, don't spend time defining goals that are very fluffy, philosophical. Just make it relatable so that everybody can relate and say, oh, yeah, I get it. It's important for our business. It's important for our team as well. So try spending time defining the goals that everybody can relate to. So example, for those who know me, I've worked for almost 4 years with video meetings and collaboration in the collaboration space. And so this is an example when you do a project for video meetings from a refugee camp. And example here, like goals for that. So it's short, connect refugees with their family, measurable, majority able to place a call without instructions. So that's important. So we can measure that, we can attach a metric to it. And then relatable, private and secure meetings. So for example, when working with Cisco and Pexip, it's all about security. And then if you say, let's kick off a project that's non-profitable, you're gonna spend your free time on it, not getting paid, and you want to get engineers involved, you need to kind of make it relatable. And this is very relatable for them and saying, okay, yeah, we can showcase that it's really secure, it's really private, no one's tapping into. So that's relatable for them, for example, because as a designer or researcher, I would need to involve developers to kind of help me out there. That's goals in context. Then there's a Norwegian company, it's very fortunate to meet, and it's called Handy. And I'm looking at Amedea, like giving it the looks. Haha. It's a company that works with special kind of toys especially for a man audience, which is a male audience. Really cool team. And even they have a very similar way of setting up goals. So connect partners over distance, short goal, measurable. More than 40% of users connect the device with interactive content. That means that you will see more value of the product. So the product will be more engaged, and that's important for them, because then you will be a loyal customer. And then relatable. So they're a very tech company, so it's really important that it's still kind of gadgety and techy. So for example, like all the men using it, they think it's a gadget, not just a toy, for example. Fun stuff. The goals, they change over time, and that's great. And if you want to do good work, and that's what I try to be more involved, is setting up the goals, sitting together with the team. Don't let product management and development be the only one setting up the goals. Be involved and be aware that the goals change. So as designers, a lot of times we come in and say, like, we're gonna help the world. We're gonna do this amazing new product. But that's maybe the end goal. What is the first slice? And we are usually not that excited about, oh, okay, so we're gonna do this first. Okay. So do design the vision, but also be aware that there's slices and there's a road how to get there. So it's very important. Quickly about success. I think it's very important that we are, same as with goals, as we're part of this discussion. You will hear me talking about like KPIs and how to kind of co-own the KPIs. That's important, but first, before we own the key performance indicators, KPIs, we should be kind of aware and involved in defining success. Success means different things: increasing sales, reducing cost, improving the experience, loyalty, Most of the times, this means some monetary value. In some cases, like improving the experience, increasing engagement, also results in some dollar signs, but it's a bit longer, more cumbersome to measure it. But most of the time, there's some value, and that's great because then we can say we contributed 0.2% to that goal. So that's success. How do you get to answer those questions? The first, my first go-to would be a good kickoff stakeholder interview. Whoever are your stakeholders? Is it the business owner? Is it the product manager, the project manager? Who kicked off the project? Who set the initiatives? Who invited you into the team? Who asked you something? That's first way, like the first step, at least for me, would be to try to clarify that. And then you can go one level up, one level down. One level up meaning, okay, that's, for example, a project manager, but we don't really trust that person. So they may be running the project, but they're not really the stakeholder. That's important. So we want to get access to the, for example, the manager that's gonna sign off the check. You might argue that they should be also involved. If you get access, great. If you don't, you just need to kind of spar a bit more with the project manager in that case. So there's different ways to do an interview, and we approach it very, very similar than a good user interview. But there's some questions that you want to clarify. And remember, you want to get those, like the goals, the scope, the domain, and the beliefs. So you want to get those kind of answers from your stakeholder interview. So you want to ask like, what is your role? So we know how to map them. Like on the right, you have a stakeholder map. Then you want to know like, okay, what does success mean for you? There's a stakeholder. So then you kind of write it down. This is their business goal. So how can we kind of attach or leach, if you want, to that goal? So that's kind of the question that we ask on the stakeholders. Again, I like the template and simplifications. So when I was working with a startup here in Norway, I created this UX questionnaire, and then like it's not the rocket science. It's a kind of a simple version of a stakeholder interview. So and that would be at least my minimum requirement for when I'm involved in a project kickoff. This would be my requirements for myself. This is what I want to know. So I want to know like who's the team, what are the business goals, what does the business side want to achieve. So if we want to improve the experience of our mobile or web application, that's not really a business goal. The business goal would be we want to get more users, or we want to convert more customers into paying customers. Well, the user goal is more where we are attached and we care more. But this should come easy for us. But how does a user goal connect to the business goal? So if a business goal is convert more users into paying customers, the user goal would be have fun and spending time in the app, for example. You could attach. They're not always relatable, but if they are, great. And then I want to understand what is the as is. What are the tasks? What are you can talk about jobs to be done. What are the workflows? How does a user or a customer go about this today? So then I can kind of frame the problem and the problem discovery and then the solution space. So that's a bit easier. Then you do the famous research plan. We'll share this one, probably seen this. It's a template, not silver bullet. I promise no silver bullets, but it's a template that worked for me for a very long time. And as you'll see later, it apparently works for other people as well, at least in our company. So goals, questions, hypothesis. So what do you think is the current assumption, the methods you will use, and then who do you need, and how will you go about it, and then what do you expect to deliver? Is it a user journey? Is it a test report? what should be the outcome of your research. Metrics, if you can measure, it's optional, but it's very good if you can deliver some. This is how it looks. And I'll show you some other examples. It actually works every single time. You can add and remove stuff, but it's kind of the minimum. If we talk about democratizing and research, this would be my #1 requirement. Everybody follows the same structure. So if you're a product manager, a designer, engineer, if you say you're doing user research, just at least fill that out. So that's the minimum requirement. That's standardized. It's the first step. So we talk about the same things. So if we want to democratize, meaning everyone can do the research, in theory, we need to standardize. And it's not easy, but with templates, with guides, we can make it simpler. It's an iterative process. So we see if it works. What works for Amedea doesn't necessarily mean it works for me, because we work in different setups. We might work in the same domain, same industry, but not everything it can be duplicated and copy pasted. A research plan, I will argue that it can. So it's a standard. And then finally, I think we need to be better at reporting. We hate that word because it means like papers, but we need to be able to explain with words, with numbers, what we mean by that, by our work, by our, for example, the findings. So are we able to report it in one slide? Why not, if not? So again, there's tons of different templates and plans how to do it. Like if you're doing usability testing, or if you are doing any generic kind of testing. I'm really a fan of like the cards created by Strategizer. So that's the team behind the infamous business model canvas. And not always possible to squeeze it in, but this is like a really good way. So I'm a fan. If you can templatize, great. It's also more fun and everyone can kind of do it. And then you have the same way of reporting. Back, we were joking before, to the mothership. So we could look at the cards and the reports, and then we compare from different teams or in reports over time. Speaking of over time, what we started doing at Cognite, we started talking about, okay, how can we talk about our products? How can we talk about our work in a more structured way? And one thing that I used to do in the past was to do these like health checks. So below it's an example of baseline and benchmarking metrics we did with Cisco. So it said like, okay, this is the UX goal, like the user experience goal, and this is the measure. So if the goal is to reduce time needed to onboard new users, if I'm the IT admin, so how will we measure? We will measure advanced feature usage, whatever that means. And then we said, okay, what does that mean? And measuring instrument is add batch of new users, because we were validating that if you would add, for example, a bunch of new users, that would make your life much easier, because research shows this is the #1 complaint. It takes ages. And then the metric, how to measure the goal is average time on task. So as an IT admin, I used to spend 7 minutes to do this. Now I spend 1 minute, for example. Or in this example, target level 10 minutes per user. So that's kind of, and then you track over time if you improved or not. And speaking of which, this is what we're piloting at Cognite. It's like a 1-pager in FigJam. So I imagine design teams very good at talking about like what have we done. But in this format, kind of forcing people to not talk about design that much. So say like, yeah, we did these 3 things. But then asking them, hey, did you look at any kind of numbers? And I'm literally saying any kind of, because as designers, we usually don't look at any numbers. But did we, in this past 2 weeks, so we have a cadence of team get together every 2 weeks, we get together, the whole design team, and then we want to look at the work in a more structured way. So, okay, we actually learned something. We looked at this metric in Mixpanel, for example, and we've seen that it's number of new users increased by 31%. This is interesting. And then there's like 2 notes you can leave, not more. And then we looked at also as another metric, saying like amount of data uploaded to our platform, which is interesting, but it actually decreased. Is it good, bad? We can explain what we think about that number. So just to be more comfortable talking about numbers is the goal here. Whilst on the other hand, we have qualitative, which we are much better at. So talking to people. But do we know like who did we talk to? So we talked to 3 internal and 1 external, and that's great. So would be kind of worrying if we would always talk to internals and never talk to external, or just talking to external users in our specific case means it's not necessarily the best way, because our product is so specific. It's a lot of times our internal team is setting it up. So completely isolating those internal stakeholders and subject matter experts out would not be the right way. So it needs to be a healthy balance. And then what we have here is like just 1 key learning, not 7, not 8, just 1. What is the 1 key learning from the past 2 weeks? And what is 1 surprising fact? Just like keep it very, very simple. And then at the right, what I added is like how confident are we in our design decisions and output? So how confident are we that we are delivering value? How confident are we that this is the right thing? And below you have a different, so it's not the same thing. So how satisfied and proud are we of our work? So maybe it's delivering value, but it looks shit. Or maybe it looks awesome, but it's actually, we're not confident. So there are 2 different things. And forcing, especially designers, to talk about our work in a structured way, I think it's one way to standardize and to evangelize this, the kind of more, not data minded, but kind of more data informed. So let's try to quantify. And what I'm hoping this will lead us to is to see how we evolve. Is our confidence increasing as a team? Yes, no. Is it good when we work on that specific product and then it suddenly drops when we work on something else? So it's not always best if it grows. Same as with research, it's not always best if we talk to more users. And that's the whole point. It should be a healthy balance. And talking about balance, this is then the proper mixed methods. So you have a bit of quantitative, qualitative, you talk to users, it's structured, unstructured. That's the best way to kind of mix and match. Spent way too much time on this, I'm sorry. I'm excited. We're trying it out. We can also skip this one, but I wanted to show this briefly, what mixed methods for me, what does it mean? It's, again, I'm oversimplifying, but it means using different methods and triangulating insights. So I was, like I said, working with WebEx devices, and we use different kind of research. And I'm showing you one specific project, which is this desk device, where I was the only researcher on that. So doing mainly research in isolation, which is not the best, but that's why I kind of standardized and templatized as much as possible for myself. So doing interviews, then as you see, like I pre-tagged all the post-its because I was expecting answers in specific order. And so I was trying to make life easier for me. And then always, of course, like the goal is when you get quotes, like short, snappy quotes, this is what I'm always gunning for. Very important, again, when we went out, that was a trip to US. We were on 2 research trips with a product team. So I was the only researcher on the team and going with a product team and sales and business. And it's great, but you need to kind of have them not on a leash. That's a very mean way to say it, but you kind of need to kind of point them in the right direction. So what I created here is this template. So when we were out looking for insights, so why not direct them? Like insights will not just like kind of dawn upon you. If you look for things, you will see things. So please look for like camera and position. Where do they have their camera? What's the position? Do they have the privacy shutter on, off? How do they do meetings? So, and then at the end of each customer visit, when I was in the interview, them kind of watching, I asked them like, hey, just like, what's the good things you think, the bad, and then what's the ugly, like that's definitely the most broken. So, and then focusing on the desk and in our case, in the spaces, the meeting rooms. So that's how kind of I try to kind of point them to give me more structured insights. Otherwise, it would be just, notes, and that would mean I need to decipher and ask them what do they mean by it, and then it would be 2-3 days pass, and then it would be a very cold and very biased knowledge already. So that's why I love doing that. And when you have that, then you kind of can analyze and compare and tag and quantify, and this is where it gets excited, because then you can report back. On the same project, did a lot of baseline testing. So how does it work? How long does it take to do one thing? What do competitors do? So this competitive analysis, doing the same task. See, again, structured, and then you put it, it's fun, unboxing other competitors, for example, and then you put everything, again, you put it in, not necessarily a spreadsheet, but in one way to kind of compare apples to apples. How do others do it? And how do we compare? So that's very quickly going through how to approach mixed methods, and then ending with report what you find. It's great exercise for yourself, but it's also a tremendous value for others to learn from what you did. Then yes, this is the big box I always show. This is what we actually smuggled to US, and we were showing it to customers. This is the prototype. This is the product, super awesome. Not going to the demo, so I'm gonna stop pitch. And I'll show you that synthesis is a team sport, which means like do bring your insights and do it together. Be it like user journey, big fun user archetypes. It should be you kind of working together with the team, and the team being whoever is involved, developers, product managers, business designers, doesn't really matter. And this is from Pexiv, and this is personas or user archetypes that we use. They're like fun, but everybody can relate to. So I was really happy to see them kind of evolve and being used, and then they became like the heroes. It's very generic, it's very improper persona, but it works, and it's really it really helped us talk about our product to different people, and especially amongst ourselves. So even like this simple slide here shows it's very complicated. So customers are actually very, not secondary, but there's like all these like other people involved before our product touches the final customer. And that's important to show. And that's something we do together. This is from Cognite. What we do is kind of synthesis together, like I said, bringing like all the insights and findings into one structured way. And I'm going to show you this one, how we got to that one. But before we do that, I'm sorry I took all the time, but I hope we have. I'm perfectly fine going a bit over. But before I go, switch off pitch. Maybe there's a question or two.
Any questions? Anyone?
And I'll start sharing, but in the meantime, just shoot.
I have a question in the meantime. How much time does it take? So how much time do you spend actually researching and preparing, and then how much time is it data collection or data organizing and then reporting?
So that's a good point. So it should take less and less time, and that's what I wanted to share is how we do research is, see, for example, on 1 hour of interview, I usually would spend like 3 hours analyzing it. It's like a rule of thumb. But then when we report it, right, then it takes much less time. For example, if you do the interview, then for me, take some learnings and talking about democratizing, then I can benefit from your 3 hours invested. But it's usually it takes a lot of time to like understand, and then especially to synthesize. So for me, synthesis takes like the big chunk, which we need to kind of justify. And that's why I like talking about democratizing, because then that's the way of justifying time invested. So, but with, for example, on the product discovery, and we would spend like 2 weeks on research, like 6 weeks on design development, for example. But the research means also development, doing their own part of research. So we call it the product discovery or problem discovery, different phases. So we work with problem discovery, problem definition, and then solution discovery, solution definition. So we work what we call bets, and then you decide like as a team. So we want to focus on problem discovery, and it doesn't mean only researchers involved. So a lot of times we would be just one part. I'm not looking elsewhere. I'm just finding my screen share.
Okay. Anyone else has any questions? You're so shy today.
It's me talking so much.
Maybe a question, how you see the difference between first time doing research, so onboarding on a project, and then, I don't know, working on a project for a longer period of time and then doing continuous research?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So we all strive to do continuous design, continuous research, and what we call the product initiative, it's called like continuous discovery. That's being led by product management at Cognite, and I really love the idea that we keep on discovering new things. How to do it? It's kind of a tricky part, because it's much easier to kick something off, to kick a new project, to build a new app, or to build a new feature. And then we're all excited, then we launch it, and we go to the next shiny object. That's the easiest way to do it. But if you work on for example, on a product like we work, it's not really, it's more continuous. It's more evolution than revolution. So then I think habits are the most important. So you treat like evolution the same as revolution. So you kick off projects, you kick off sprints the same way, with goals. And that's how we would, for example, yesterday we had sprint planning and we set the goals. And maybe it's going to be a boring 2-week sprint, but then next one will be exciting, but we will treat it the same, with the same kind of structure and respect. So it's going to be, we will measure, we'll get cake at the end if we deliver. So the same excitement. And that I think is important, at least to kind of keep the same momentum. We cannot always work, like I said, we cannot always work on new cool things. Sometimes we need to invest in a small iterative step and continuously improve. But really the same. It's same gratification at the end. Just if nothing else, just make a fake celebration. Like, yes, we did something. We groomed the backlog. Great. We talked to 2 people, and that's why we are trying to also do this like kind of templates and stuff. Kind of everybody did something great. Just using the format to show.
Damjan, we have another question. Barbara is asking if you could give us any examples of reports that we could use to convince our superiors, managers, clients about the benefits that UX research can have to business results.
Yes. No. I hope I can. So what I'm showing, I think, see my screen. So what I'm showing is we use Dovetail for research. So for doing all the interviews and analysis. And what is here is one of the stories. I call them reports, because this is showing, hey, this is how much work was done. And then they would say like your business stakeholders like, fuck, this is like 50+ interviews. Like, did we actually have the time and money to spend on it? And I was like, you know what? Actually, it was time and money well spent. And let me show you why. So because with this project, we learned this. We learned that this is how it works today. For example, this would be kind of a report of one project. And then you see, I already started with business reasoning. So we learned that if you do it as you keep on doing, it's very costly. You know, in this specific case, we work with customer that builds something that costs like $8 billion, for example. It's an oil platform. It's very expensive, so it's risky. And that's why we're doing it. And that's why you ask us to kind of look at who are the users. Because if you don't do it right, we will invest time in developing something that doesn't work. And that would be my kind of the way of reporting. It's a bit bigger report, but you see, like connecting directly user insights to like what they actually said and what we measured, and then creating this key insights. You see, again, like proof is there. I love connecting direct raw proof into the report, but then kind of saying like, hey, this is what we found. And here at the end, I have some learnings and then the jobs to be done, which is, again, if you want to your question, Barbara, if you want to justify why we as designer are part of it, then we say, hey, we can equip, for example, we can equip product teams with actual work items they should work on. And they speak jobs to be done language. So let's use jobs to be done language to explain what we mean. But it's just one way of reporting. If you can, like in my past lives, I got quantifiable reports, that's even better. If you can talk about any kind of numbers, then it's great. And talking about numbers, and I'll just jump in if there's a question. I'm just going through. What I have here is like also talking about numbers and justifying. So again, set of methods that we can try to use. So for different, this is about democratizing research. Different methods for different type, different phase. So what I was trying to do here is just list out what should we do, what should be the actions, what should be the methods that we use, and then for different set of the step of the project.
What is your favorite method?
That's a tough question. The contextual inquiry is my favorite because I love talking to people in their context of use. So doing interviews in their natural habitat is definitely my favorite. So learning from the environment itself. So combining tacit knowledge with structured insight gathering, definitely favorite.
If you would have to identify one person in the company or more, or profile in the company, when you're starting out or when you're bringing in UX research, when you're trying to get buy-in, who would be the best advocate for you?
That's a good question. For me, like the advocate is like in our specific, like in Cognite, I love spending time with customer success because their job is to make sure that our users are successful using our product. This is the toughest job, I think, even if you work with the best product, but it's like the proof of value. The product has been sold already. So you might argue that's the toughest job is done, but then you need to prove value. And this is those kind of, they need to be advocate for the user. They're not driven by sales itself, they're driven by engagement, which is, so they need to understand really the needs. You might argue the business people, they know what to sell, but then the customer success needs to understand what we need to do to keep the users. So at least for me, that's the advocates kind of I'm looking for and spending time with them lately. So
They usually have the best data also because they spend so much time with users.
Yeah, they might have a biased data, so because they also have the ear of the customer, which is great and scary, especially if we have big customers. Like in our case, we don't have as many, like tons of customers. We have very big customers, So they're very expensive, very big customers, and they pay a lot. So they also rightfully so, they think they have more say in it. So, and they're, as a customer success person, you need to be very mindful, like, okay, they're shouting very loud, but how do we boil that down? And again, that's, if you can standardize, then you put it somewhere in a, I love putting it in a spreadsheet, and then you quantify, okay, yeah, 10 out of 10 said the same thing, then it's easy. So our product management works with product board exactly for that reason. But that's another listening tool for, at least for me, to kind of see what's happening there.
We have another question from Alia. Damjan, I guess at Cognite, your PMs and our customers are domain experts with years of experience. So research is probably not going to teach them broad new insights, but needs to be super specific. Is that your experience? And if so, how do you complement each other?
Yes, a very, very good point. And this is what I was saying before. I feel like the imposter syndrome, because yes, our PMs are very much like the industry expert. Otherwise, you can't be a PM in our domain, because it's very specific. So it's like the language they speak. But I'm very fortunate that PMs that at least I work with, they're very open-minded. So they're very, very, very tolerant. So a lot of times I go in meetings and I feel like, Jesus, like I would not invite myself. And I'm aware of that, but they keep bringing me in, and kind of, they like to be challenged. And that's what we are here. And that's what design is here for, to challenge the establishment. And good companies, they see value in that. I know it's kind of like, first world problem, blah, blah, but I see more and more. So we are brought in exactly because we don't have maybe 20 years of industry experience. So I would argue you're not the best designer if you actually worked in one domain for 20 years, because then you will be an expert user, and that's also not the best. So it's good to have this like a more naive hat, because basic human needs are still there. Like, I should be able to do the task even if I'm not an expert. But it is the value is to challenge. I think that's what the value we are asked to bring. And then the structure is the other one. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question. So if there's any more brave souls out there still with us.
I'm sorry I took all the time for me talking.
It's okay. We love to hear you speak. Okay, I think this is it. No more questions. As I already posted in chat, if anybody wants to learn more, we are enrolling in Damjan's cohort of design research. I also posted the link in the chat. If you need more if you need more information, if you have any more questions, you can ping me or Anna or Damjan or anyone from our school. Thanks everybody for being here. It was a great number of people, and hope to see you in one of next courses, meets, internships, and whatever else we do. So thanks everybody. Have a great day, have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.